All right, I guess that means that I'm on cue because I just heard the music stop. So that's a very good thing. I'm Charles Morse. Welcome to Brother Can We Talk? It's a weekly show that airs right here on Zoom and live on Facebook, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Charles Morse. I'm joined by two other great brothers. We call him the original Coach Carter. He's out of the hills and the mountain of Tennessee. And somewhere near the strip of Vegas, we call him the elder, Rory T. Edwards. And this is a good topic, and I'm not going to try to take up too much time. I'm going to take it to the hills and the mountains of Tennessee with the original Coach Carter. He's going to break it down for us because we got a good topic going on today. Original Coach Carter, how you doing there with your Bruins? Is that a Bruin shirt that I see?
Absolutely, Brentwood Brewing, without a shadow of a doubt. Good evening, everyone. May I say hello to my fellow men and women, brothers and sisters, and kings and queens. We are glad to have you with us again for the opportunity to have some provocative conversation on what I consider to be, and continuing from my previous conversation, a topic that is going to certainly generate what I think some great conversation. And we want to make sure that everybody understands this is an opportunity to only exchange ideas. We're not indicting anybody. We don't want anybody's feelings to get hurt, but we do want to hear your opinion. We're here to share the opportunity to share our opinions, learn something, and make us better as a person and as a group of people. That having been said, the topic for this evening, the conversation we will have is the angry Black woman. Is it true? Is it false? Is it real? Or is it imagined? Now this is what we want to discuss about that this evening. Now, right now we have two queens on that I may have to call on. We have others coming on. So let me kind of give a brief introduction. We have on there with us Alan Harrell out of sunny Florida, Daytona Beach, Florida. There we have Mia Brendan, also from the Sunshine State. We have Lawrence Davis, is also from the Sunshine State, and Regina, the resident consultant to Brothers Can We Talk, also out of the Sunshine State. We're glad to have you. We're waiting for others that hope you will join us. But having said that, let's get this topic started. Give me, please, let me start with Regina, if I may. Good evening, glad to see you, always a pleasure. The topic being, angry Black woman, true, false, real, or imagined?
Well, I think
that's a loaded question, but listen.
It is. I think it really depends on your experience and how you perceive that experience. Do you generalize your interaction with a woman that appeared to be angry to you? Do you generalize that across all women? Or are you mature enough to say that is for that particular situation? So the question, or yet the topic, is very appropriate because I do believe it should depend on your experiences and how you internalize that experience.
Mia, your thoughts?
I would definitely have to agree the situation is the context of what does that mean? Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we're portrayed that way in movies, in soap operas, in different ways we're portrayed. And then I think people go away with that stigma in their head. And so they apply it whether or not the situation, like Miss Regina said, unless it really is, let's look at it a little bit deeper. Just that stamp.
I want to
Vince.
throw this in hold on just a second, Charles. One of the questions that came up the other day, and I was having an outside conversation. When we say angry woman, are we saying angry woman, or are we saying evil Black woman? Now, I think there's a difference right there. We got an angry Black woman, and then we got an evil Black woman. So hold on just a second, Charles.
No, it's funny because there was a conversation recently about on the Democratic Party with Biden and who he chose as his new vice president running mate. And then the word around was she's this angry black woman. And I'm like, well, why are they saying that she's this angry black woman? Because and I'm asking the ladies on the panel, I don't want to throw it off, Vince, but is it been known that if a woman speaks her mind, she's considered angry because she has an opinion? If she knows who she is and can speak in the terms of being able to speak up for herself? Do we find that? And I'm asking the ladies, have you found that might be the case where men may label you as angry black women?
Well, let me throw in a couple of adjectives in addition to that, but I definitely want to hear from the queen. Aggressive, keep being assertive. Bossy, keep on leading. Difficult, keep telling the truth. Too much, keep taking up space. Awkward, keep asking hard questions. Is that an angry black woman? Or is that an evil woman? Or is that an informed woman? Black woman. I challenge that thought. And so, Queens?
I think that's a woman that's not afraid to check her opponent or check whomever she's having a conversation with. That's a confident woman. And for some reason, for us, confidence is confused with arrogance.
Mia?
I definitely would have to ditto that. That is what I think has created the basis, the foundation of the angry black woman, is based on what you just said.
Brother Harold? Okay, can't hear you. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
If we usually find a black woman who is intelligent and articulate, we reason her away by saying she is angry. Mm-hmm. It's just as the white male speaks of black males as they are the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, Brother Harold, you had a question for me the other day that you were doing a conversation we had. I'd like for you to put that out right now as well. You remember what you asked me?
Regina mentioned right off the bat about maturity. Usually when we say black women are angry, we take ourselves out of the equation. Are they angry because we take ourselves out of the equation, or are they angry because of something we have done? Black women are not usually born to be angry. They are very intelligent, very beautiful species, but their intelligence is activated probably by some of the things that we males do, we brothers do. So I think before we can ask that question, we have to ask ourselves, what do we do to make our sisters mad?
Now that's an interesting thought, because we were talking about that before. We were talking about how a black man earns the respect, and then we gave those lists of possibilities of things that happen that gets turned around sometimes, that cause, when we don't do what we're supposed to do, we then charge her with being the angry black woman.
Correct.
Let me go to Valerie, and I would like to, so happy to have you join us this evening. Question being, angry black woman, is it true? Is it false? Is it real? Or is it imagined?
Great evening, kings and queens. So is it true, false, imagined? Are those the categories we're working with tonight?
True, false, real, or imagined?
I'm going to say it's false.
Okay.
Um, angry black women misunderstood black women is what comes to mind for me, on how a perception of a black woman is perceived by another person, but not angry.
Now, my kings. I'll go back to. I have Brother Harold. I have Charles. And then I'm going to come to Elder Edwards. Your experience in this phenomenon. Is she truly angry? Is she misunderstood? Is it true, false, real, or imagined? Because one of the things that was said, the experience that you have would help to define this situation for you, whether it's been a personal relationship or it's in a family dynamic that kind of helps shape that, I think. Would you all agree that your experience and exposure would be the ability for you to define this? Do we agree? Pretty much so. Okay.
Or is she disappointed?
Well, absolutely. Which we sometimes cause, and sometimes unfairly, we are the cause of her feeling unfulfilled and disappointed as well. Because I had a conversation about the expectation of relationships and what onus we put on people to do for us that we really need to do for ourselves. Charles, is it real in your experience?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm multitasking here. The question goes back, I guess, with the experience. I always like to look at things, I guess, a little differently. But in trying to answer your question, I have to ask myself, have I played a part in it? Or have we played a part in it? And I want to put a twist on it for you, Vince. Are they angry because they're out of position and out of place because of who we are and we're not doing what we're supposed to do? Is that one of the main reasons why they're angry? Because they're truly out of position and out of place. And because they're out of position and out of place, we're all out of place. So a lot of times I have felt anger from them, but I also felt as if though there was some that was lost in who they are. And I don't want to switch it up, but I have a person who I was very close to who to this day doesn't realize how disrespectful she was to me. To this day, she still doesn't know. And I would always say to her, you don't respect me. But she doesn't understand. She's just being herself. So I think because she has not been taught, she didn't see it growing up, and she's just being herself. And she's being disrespectful to me, but she doesn't even realize it. And I hope I answered your question.
Brother Edwards.
Good evening. I mean, I'm trying to control these entries, but I always want to throw a wrench in it. And so I'm going to take it from a historical perspective. We have been the only group that has come into this country and have identified ourselves by so many names. Now, what does that have to even do with this conversation? We have been so receptive of accepting whatever someone tells us about the definition of who is involved in our circles of influence. And we've allowed people to tell us that, first and foremost, a passionate African-American man is angry. We have allowed people to say that because our woman, who you expressed earlier in the other adjectives, is all of those particular things, that she's angry. Why can't she be informed? Why can't she be knowledgeable? Why can't she challenge you? Because what makes your truth, right, the foundation of validation. And so we have to stop accepting particular terms and then attaching that to someone who doesn't agree with us. Because you don't agree with me, it doesn't have to be angry. I tell people all the time right now, I don't get into arguments anymore, because all arguments are a change, you trying to change the perception of someone else's thinking towards yours. And so if I go into a conversation and I'm playing tennis with you, and we're going back and forth, and we're going back and forth, and we still don't agree, where can we stop at the point and say, I can agree to disagree and move on to something that's productive for both of us? So I think that Black women, when you look at the definition of angry Black woman, is it real? Is it false? I definitely think it's false. I think that so many times, especially in relationships, what happens is people try to come in, one or the other tries to control the other, instead of setting up a foundation of moving forward in a progressive and opportune way, that we sometimes go out and what we spew into the atmosphere sometimes circles back to us and becomes reality. And so we try to validate the words that came out of our mouth about, oh, she's just angry. No, she just didn't agree with you. And it doesn't have to be in reference to just Black men. It could be in reference to whatever field she works in, just as I say in reference to any field I work in. If I go into a situation and I think that I know, or I don't have to think, excuse me, I know that I know more than you know, then when I express to you that, no, you're not saying what's accurate, and you take me as being angry, I take you as being uninformed. And so that is from the hill of the elder, and I will take my place rightfully back on the top of the throne. Thank you.
Amen. A king on his throne. You can't be, the world must be right because the king is on his throne. Going back to what Charles is, let me follow up on what Brother Edward said, but also interject what Charles was saying. And Queens, I'd like for you to consider this. When we, that man of us, when we're out of step with what we should be, who we should be, it creates pressure, I think, on the Black female. Is that sometimes the perception that we walk away with her being angry, disillusioned, unagreeable, not able to work with, because she's carrying the load and we've disappointed her to something to that? Could you elaborate on that, Queens? Monica?
Oh, okay, Monica.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Regina. Oh, wait a minute. There she is. Hello. Good evening. All right. Go ahead, Regina. Oh, I can't hear you.
I'm going to try to do this without a 18-month-old screaming.
That's okay. Bring them on. Put them on the mic. We'll talk to them too.
Real quick. I don't want to put a blanket statement to say that it's false that there are no angry Black women. I do believe that there are some, and it is just like you said, Coach Carter, that if she is a person that has been disappointed, we'll just say by men, and she's carrying this load, the children, the job, public assistance, whatever the case may be, by herself, yeah, she is angry, but I don't think it is necessarily directed towards any one person. She is angry. She doesn't know how to get out of her situation. In a situation, she doesn't know how to get out of it. And yes, I believe that there are some angry Black women, but to put a negative connotation with that I think is wrong, because you don't know that woman's pain. You don't know what she has been through and what she's going through. So that's just my comment on that.
Monica.
I totally agree with Regina. She said what I was thinking. So,
Valerie. Oh, there you are.
When we look at anger and really consider that is an emotion that we all have. And so it could be on a spectrum of emotions that individuals, predominantly women, is subject of this conversation, have. And it did not being a negative or positive conversation, but just something that occurs. And so you could move on a spectrum of being positive and being negative at the same time, but looking to where is there a balance. And when we talk about the angry Black woman, where's there a balance? The stressors that could contribute to the anger, there's a way in different situations that a balance can occur, but first identifying what they are would be key.
Yeah.
Well, I would definitely have to echo everything my queens have already said. It's the perception, like I said at the beginning of this, and it is the circumstance. Sometimes we come off abrupt because we are angry and we are frustrated and we are hurt and we are disappointed. But like I said last week, we have to check our delivery. If we want you to win, and that is our goal, I have to get you to listen and understand where I'm coming from. And maybe my passion is on volume 90. And maybe I am acting a bit aggressive. However, I care maybe a little bit harder than you. Maybe my emotions, my passion is going, too hard. And maybe I need to recognize that and back up and go back to the drawing board and then reapproach. But if I'm angry, if I'm frustrated, it's because I want you to win and you not winning right now. Something, you're not holding up that end of the bargain, whatever the agreement was.
Can we let me speak to this too? Let me throw this in, because I think I talked about it earlier and I want to bring it back. So we're talking about an angry black woman, but is it relevant on the evil woman, one who just will be indifferent because she has a different set of an agenda. She's just not relationship oriented, but she perceives herself, she projects herself that way. And in every relationship, she walks out and says that this guy has not fulfilled her needs. He's not able to do that. Is that relevant? Is that true? I'm throwing that out to the group there, because that can be on both sides. Because now let me also flip that while you're thinking about that, and that angry black man syndrome fits in there too, because we're dealing with the same set of emotions and disappointments. I'm not excusing us by any chance, but I'm just simply saying that we kind of deal in that same arena. Your thoughts?
My thought is that when you find an individual, whether it be man or woman, they're not happy within themselves. So unfortunately, where do you go from there? Because, you have to make yourself happy. No one can make you happy. You have to be able to do that. And if that person can't do that,
But is that the place? Sometimes we misplace blame. We say that, but we give our partner a huge expectation of trying to resolve the issues that we are fighting, which sometimes we don't know that issue. Obviously, we cannot resolve that issue. I've had a discussion where we talked about happiness, and that is that happiness is internal. No one makes me happy. I'm happy already. And all you can do is assist in my happiness. But if I'm not happy, there's nothing you can do to change. I'm the factor of that. And I think that's rolling over into this conversation. Would you agree?
I agree.
It's about who we are.
I agree.
Now, Pastor Crutch, it's so nice to have you with us this evening. Let me catch you up real quick. And also, Iris, I see you there. Thank you for joining us. Our question: angry black woman. We're defining her, and we're saying the angry black woman, is it true, false, real, or imagined? And then we also are putting in that scenario, there's a difference between an angry black woman and an evil black woman. There could be a huge difference in that. Brother Crutcher.
Well, first of all, there is a major difference in that. Because the evil woman, she can be smiling and just as acting just as sweet and pouring out as much poison as you can get. So,
yeah.
There's a major difference in there. And when you're talking about angry, there is a such thing as angry black women. Here's the thing that we have to see. First of all, does she have a reason to be angry? Yeah. Some folk have had some things that happen to them that they have a reason to be angry, and they need to be angry. And the problem is in that case is not that they're angry, but is what do they do with it to bring healing for themselves and people around them. There's some folk, as you just talked about, are angry because they're not satisfied with who they are, or have not come to grips with their own self. And in that case, when a person is angry, then that anger is really demonically driven. And that's the other part that we have to deal with, because we live in this world sometimes and we act like we forget there is a devil that interferes with us. And I tell folk, if he tried Jesus, he shall not go overlook you. and so we have to deal with some folk, the people in that category, it becomes influenced by the world and influenced by demonic forces. And it's what do people do with the anger? Because if you got a reason to be angry, then you don't let it become internal. You deal with it so it don't become an internal force that begin to tear you apart by facing it, dealing with a way that brings healing to that. So yes,
that's a great point. And let me step further into your realm. There is that spiritual component, but you did speak of, and I don't think that can ever be minimized. But with something that you spoke about that I think we need to consider is the healing process. Yes. Is there any healing going on in here that can change this perception, enhance it, and drive it in a different direction? Are we willing to be healed? Because we know that, I believe most of us are aware of the fact that we are scarred. We may not say it, but we recognize that we're scarred. So in bringing, and then we take that, just the old adage of taking your baggage with you where you go, and you bring it in front of her and she rejects it or does not handle it the way you want to, you walk away and say, she's just angry. But then again, you could have caused that. So healing, and we're not talking enough about healing. Brother Harold, talk to me about the healing process as you see that. Is that relevant to this angry black woman in defining her and helping her overcome what we perceive to be, or enhancing that situation?
It's relevant to both of us. There is no different, I don't believe, into the degree of anger and evil in a male and that in a female. Both were created with the same degree. Is at which level do they take it? So the black man and the black woman have to come to a middle ground where they can share their differences. Then the evil will be reduced, or the anger will be reduced. What we don't try to do is, because of our selfishness and because of pride, self-pride, we don't try to reach a balance between the two. One tried to let his evil overcome the other, or the one tried to let his anger overcome the other, and we never find a middle ground. I don't believe that there is a difference between the anger of a black female and the anger of a black male. I think they are both equal in that.
Charles.
Real quick, I just responded to someone off of Facebook, and the response that they said was that she can be misunderstood. And I think that we kind of touched on that a little bit, but I just asked the question, what do you mean by misunderstood? My question that I also had, that I'm asking the question because I like to address the ladies, with this question. Is it because I look at it from the standpoint that sometimes we don't grow up seeing how to deal with conflict, and you kind of learn on the way, but it turns into anger and frustration, and then you don't have the skills to be able to deal with conflict. And so we react out of a way that is not necessarily, that comes across in a positive way, because the saying is you don't know how to fight. And what I mean by that is not physically fight, but how we can disagree and walk away from the table. So I think a lot of this in that we're dealing with, that I look at, is that a lot of times we come from a place where we didn't see conflict being resolved in a manner in which it was in a mature adult way. And so I think, especially when you're young and things are not going your way, you tend to act in a very young way, in a very immature way. But I also think a lot of this that takes place is because we didn't grow up, not all of us, but a lot of us didn't grow up watching how to deal with conflict. You know, watching, you know, a lot of us did see things that it could have been an argument that dealt with something physical, words that were not kind, and so on and so forth. So this is what we adapt to. And then a lot of us kind of mature and grow out of that to realize this is not right. But I think a lot of times, Vince, we did not grow up seeing things being dealt with in a manner in which it was healthy. And I hope I answered that question.
Interesting point. Valerie, I know that you have some interaction in couples. And how do you see what Charles is saying in the healing process and the misunderstanding of the relationship play out in those settings?
Oftentimes with couples sessions, it is really looking at the dynamics of who individuals are, looking at the trauma and the ripples of trauma that have occurred leading up to adulthood, when you have two people who've experienced, could be different upbringing, different environment, different aspects of the relationship, and now they're expected in a marriage to come together on one accord and be equally yoked, and then those differences continue to arise. What a lot of the work that we do here at the Realm is really looking at finding out who you were and what those traumas were as children, as young people, that lead up to unhealthy behaviors, or it could be that anger scenario that goes on to lead you in relationships in adulthood that are negative when you're trying to be positive. So it's a continual work that is going on.
Hi, can I just jump in for a second and just piggyback off of something Valerie said?
Please.
Anger, especially in women, in all aspects, anger is a result of fear. It's exaggerated fear. So there, as she talked about trauma in your background and things going on, typically, because sometimes people get angry and there's no conflict. It could be a word. It could be something that someone says in passing, which triggers that anger. And the reason that anger is triggered is because something happened in that person's past and they fear that it will happen again. They fear that they'll feel those feelings again. And then in order to protect themselves, it becomes anger. And so I think trauma, I know this is a new area that we're looking at, but anytime I see anger, I'm a social worker as well. I used to work in the school system. I'm doing some private practice, but anytime I hear people say they were angry or this angered them, I really try to get to the root of what happened. What was that trigger to cause it? And I think that's something that, we have to think about when we talk about anger. Is it really anger or is it a response to pain?
And I might add, and thank you so much for that, I also think not only response to pain, but response to fear of going into a situation that you're not familiar with, you're unfamiliar, or not feeling prepared. And it would cause you to react because a lot of times that's what that fear plays along with the pain. I don't want to repeat the pain I had. I'm fearful I'm going to make the same mistake or the same thing is going to happen to me. So what we're looking at, and Queen, help me here, is that relative to building that strong relationship that we're trying to build? Is that relative?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat your question again?
Looking at not only our pain and our fear, and what we've been trying to do is to strengthen this relationship between our Black men and our Black women. And this is some of the stumbling blocks that we have. How relatable is fear in that perception of being disappointed or repeated pain comes to us? How does fear play into that? Is it relative?
I think it's relevant because fear takes many forms. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to be, so for example, if I was truly deeply hurt by someone and that person always, let's say I was hurt by someone who, that person always was gone. They were never present when I needed that person to be physically present. So then guy B may come along and he may have 2 jobs. He may be a great provider. He may be an excellent supporter. But the moment that he says, hey, you know, I have to go to work, that fear again of abandonment may come up in me and I may get angry. Why do you have to work all the time? You don't spend any time with me, you know? So yes, I think fear is very relevant.
Queens? Well, let me ask the kings. And queens, think about that. Let me go to the kings. Angry black man. Real? Imagine? True? Or false?
Well, I would say the same concept. One, true. And it's there in any race, any particular person, any sex. There's some angry people. Some people for a reason. Some people are influenced by other race. And so the context in that, but is everybody there? No. And because a person get upset about something, they're an angry person. No, you did something that they didn't appreciate. And so, and a lot of people get labeled an angry man or angry woman because somebody did something that they didn't appreciate. And so that's not angry person. So that concept exists. I don't think it exists as much as people try to say it does. And some folk try to paint that picture because they don't want to deal with people's issues. Right. And sometimes people have legitimate issues that they're trying to present. And because they have a passion about it, people come off as if they're angry or over emotional and try to say they're in control. Because sometimes other folk think you out of control. You're in perfect control. You know, but you're passionate about what you're saying and you want to get your point across. And you're in control. You ain't going to go out and blow folk up and start shooting people and stuff, but you're not going to be ignored. Yeah, right. And sometimes people want to ignore your issue, and you realize they're trying to ignore your issue, and you're not going to be ignored. And people get labeled as that. So it exists in every culture and in a set of people. But the thing is, and when you talk about healing, in order to heal from inner for hurts, it's going to take one openness. Mm-hmm. It's going to take openness upon the person that's hurt. One of the things I tell, and when I minister to a lot of people, one thing to remind people, if you get cut, the first thing you're going to do is try to close it up. And you hold it as tight as you can until you get to the doc. And as soon as you get to the doc, he take all your little stuff off and open it up. And you like, yeah, because he's got to look to see if any foreign particles there, clean it out. And before if it's a good doctor, he's going to clean it out first. So we have to get people to be willing to open. And that's going to take a trust. That they build up enough trust that they can be open. A lot of people don't heal because they don't get the trust to open up. And if you don't open up to whatever you're hurting and whatever's hurting you, it's hard to heal from that.
Queens, do you find that kings, do we trust enough? Do we exhibit enough trust in our relationship with you when we approach you? Are we approaching you from a trust factor? Do we even consider that? And that what has been your thought? What is your thought? What has been your experience in that fact? Because in order to give trust, you have to have trust. You have to be trustworthy, and you have to be able to transfer that to someone. Queens, your thought?
My thought is one area where, and this is just me, one area I feel that men could do a lot better in is showing vulnerability. Mm. And that plays into the anger and everything like that, because when you can be vulnerable, then that person can really get to the nitty-gritty and understand you. And there's a thing called fair fighting, meaning where you're not being called out of your name. You're not yelling and screaming at each other, but both of you have to get vulnerable first. And that's a very scary thing to a lot of people, especially to men. especially Black men. It's they see it, I think, as a weakness or giving up their power. But you can't have greater power than that.
Mia.
I'd like to go back to what Charles was saying a little bit earlier about the background of where people come from, what they saw in their family and their immediate family. And I know from personal experience, sometimes you find yourself just taking on that belief, that perception of your mom or dad or grandmother, whoever influenced you. Not saying that it's wrong, but maybe kind of think outside the box. Keep that, put that hat off and wear another hat and try to come to the table with your own feelings and your own mindset. And then if you are willing to be vulnerable, then now you're open. And as long as we're doing it, everybody's putting a shoulder to the wheel, then we should be able to have a fair fight or a fair disagreement, a colorful conversation, and no one's angry. And if you hurt, then I'm sorry. It's okay to say I'm sorry and keep it moving. Doesn't mean you're weak. It just means that you didn't mean maybe to come off that strong. And so if you did, queens, I'm sorry. Kings, I'm sorry. And really mean it. Yeah, and really mean it.
Yeah. Valerie?
I agree with both of the queens prior. Vulnerability is key. Really connecting with who you are, where you are, being able to undress in front of another human being with the essence of who you are to maybe begin a relationship or continue a relationship, but just to look at what is happening with those dynamics, to know that fair fight, there's a neutral ground. There's a neutral ground of understanding, of compassion, of care, and of providing love into these environments. Because oftentimes, if we're talking about someone who's angry, it's the absence of love. The fear has come in, but there's an absence of that nurturing that needs to be provided. It needs to be given. And so I agree on how vulnerability is key for growth and watering those seeds of connection.
Brother Harold, the Queen mentioned, wait, hold on, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Valerie talked about being vulnerable and undressing. I've known you a long time. Are you vulnerable and do you undress?
That depends upon the relationship that I have with the person. I think relationship is the sum total of all that we're talking about. Vulnerability is good, but I think relationship is the main key. You will know that you and I have had some strong conversations.
Yes, we have.
Strong conversation. But there was never anger and there was never fear because there was a good relationship. Right. And that has been the basis of our friendship for ages. The relationship that we have had with each other. And when you talk about an angry black woman against a black brother, what is the relationship that the two have? If the relationship is good, the anger is less. If the relationship is bad, then the anger is greater. So it's all about relationship. In all that we do, it is about relationship. We are interdependent upon each other, and that interdependency exists with the relationship that we have with each other.
I find that to be very accurate, at least in my encounters, because I think what I'm hearing also here is a sense of healing, a sense of growth and maturity, and then the vulnerability. So Charles, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, Vince. Could you repeat that question?
The current topic, what our brother Harold was talking about, it seems to be, and basically what we're all saying, there's a sense of healing, there's a sense of growth and maturity, there's a sense of vulnerability. Do you have any comment in that area?
But Vince, that's the thing. Brother Harold, right? Harold? Is it Harold?
Yes.
Yes. See, he said something that was very important, that was profound, based on the relationship. If it's good, then yeah. If it's not so good, then other stuff starts to happen. And then God made us so that we are to depend on each other. And a lot of times, like we said, somebody said something in reference to fear, especially being a man. See, women don't know what it takes when we're fearful of us not being who we know we should be. And I see you every day. And a lot of times I see you every day, and it's a reminder of who I'm not and who I should be. Now, I'm not necessarily angry at you. I'm just angry at life because God made me to be a certain way in my spirit, but I know that I'm not. And so a lot of times women don't understand. A lot of times men are angry for all the reasons of wanting to be who we think you want us to be, and I'm not. And a lot of times you a reminder, not your fault, but what life has dealt me, and I'm angry at life, and you're just there. And I hope I answered the question.
Well, Queens, haven't heard that, and having an understanding that one of the bottom line statements that I'm holding on to, that I've heard repeated in so many different ways, is that you want us to win. You really are true cheerleaders for us. But having what Charles just described, do you see that, feel that, recognize that?
Well, I think on a certain level, we do recognize that. It's just what do we do with it?
Right. Good question. That's a good question.
And I think that women we have to be secure in ourselves to know, okay, I know that action isn't directed towards me, but how can I set the atmosphere? What can I do to make him feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable and maybe to address some of these issues, right? And I think that takes a lot of strength, because sometimes you may have to take an unkind word, knowing that it's not really directed at you, but then just kind of saying, okay, he said an unkind word. I know I didn't do anything. Let me set the atmosphere. Let me see what I can say to really get to the root of what's really going on.
Brother Edwards, and then I want to come back to a Queen. Haven't heard, Brother Edwards, your thoughts?
I think there's one or two things. I want to go back again to a historical sort of reference. And when this country was sort of not really discovered, so I'm not going to ever say when this country was discovered, because it was already discovered. When this country was infiltrated, they had no borders around the particular states for which we recognize currently. And so what happened is people staked claim to a massive land and named it a particular place. So what does that have to do with this whole conversation? I think in relationships, in most cases, we don't set boundaries. We don't have boundaries. What we do is we try to smooth someone over in the first initial conversation, and we talk about all the good things. I think in reference to what Charles said, one of the things that I always say is that you cannot withdraw what you did not deposit. And so when we start to try to deliver to somebody, or over deliver, or oversell and under deliver, that's where we get caught in this whole situation. Is because when we meet someone, we're so infatuated with what they may look like, or what they may be driving, or how they're smelling, or what what we're going to call them, as far as like a nickname. We might call them snacks or something, but we may just say something that that changes the whole dynamics of a relationship. And then what happens is that we get caught into trying to, I don't know why y'all try to make me laugh. I'm trying to be very serious in this conversation, honestly.
Please, Brother Edwards, continue to pontificate, please do.
And so I think in that whole situation, what happens is that we don't set boundaries. And now I got Cool and the Gang playing in the background, but we don't set boundaries on what our relationship will be. What are those trigger words? What are words that are totally not accepted in our relationship? What are things that you cannot say to me that will totally set me to a different level? And I'm going to stick out two people real quick in this conversation. Valerie has known me all my life, and Valerie knows who I truly am. And Iris, who I keep texting and tell her to show her face, and she keeps chiming in. And I told her we're gonna cut her off if she don't show her face when she chimes in. But Iris and I met a little while ago. I met Iris when I met Charles, actually, because I did a thing in Florida, and I did a presentation in Florida, and Iris was the individual who invited me. But Iris did something in our conversations that I always knew, but I never knew. I never put a twist on it that made it fun. So I have multiple personalities, and Valerie can tell you I do have multiple personalities, and they all coexist in my life every day. But Iris took and named them, right? So when I talk to Iris, Iris will say to me, "Oh, that's Rorion coming out," or she'll say, that's Raheem, or she'll say, that's Dr. Rory. And so I say they all intertwine with one another. And I think that we have to identify that we do have certain things in our life that we try to hide sometimes because we're trying to sort of be something to everybody instead of realizing who we truly are. And so that's why I always tell people, even, when we're working with these athletes, coach, we always tell them that you cannot withdraw what you did not deposit. And you can't be something that you didn't work to become. That's right. And so you may be mad about what you think you're supposed to be, but you didn't put in the work to become that person. So you have to accept where you are in that particular. Now, real quick, does anybody know somebody that looks like the name of Just Because?
No.
What about Barbara McLean? Just because, Valerie? Just because?
Yes, Barbara as well.
Okay, good. I got them coming in. Thank you. All right.
You're welcome.
Queens, any comment on that?
But going back to Charles' statement, I do believe that you just don't go to every fight you're invited to. And so if you're met with things, whether they're words, whether they're actions, you have to make a choice on whether you're going to engage or not. Mm-hmm. You have to grow to a point that you understand where that may be somebody else's stuff that they have to deal with. If they're sending you a negative thought through, they're sending you a negative word, you don't have to accept that. And you can move and just don't get in the ring. Don't get on the court. Don't be involved in it. Make your choice. And you can do that. So whether someone is angry or they're not, you have to be responsible for your own stuff and your own sometimes baggage that you bring into every relationship. And the greatness that you bring into it as well. But that ring, that court is waiting whether you get on. That's the choice.
Brother Crutcher.
Hey, Coach, this is Lawrence. When you get a chance, I'd like to chime in.
Go ahead now, Brother Crutcher. Hold on just a minute. Go ahead, Dr. Davis. This is Lawrence Davis, a longtime friend of mine. He's hiding himself. He's incognito, but nevertheless, he's there. Please speak to us, my brother.
Okay, Coach. I've been listening to the conversations, and I tell you, you had told me that you guys engaged in some very informative and unique conversations, and you are absolutely correct. Brother Edwards took this conversation on anger to a place that I was wondering how long it was going to take for us to get to it. And he took us there when he went all the way back past 400 years before we actually came to this place. And where and what I would like to get some input and some feedback on, or at least bring to the table for discussion, is where and how do we want to introduce where legitimate anger may have derived from, whether it be men or whether it be women, because that anger is based upon our relationships, is based on a lot of different things, a lot of different components and aspects of our life here in America. And I believe that if we look back as far back as when we first were brought here, that's where a lot of that legitimate anger may have derived from, because of the separation between men and women, our families, where women have always had to take care of the children. They separated families. They separated the man from the wife. They separated the children. And women have always had to step in and take on that role of maintaining the household and raising the kids and being that provider. And then, of course, men also along the way have sometimes abdicated from their responsibilities. So there's anger there. In some cases, it could be a legitimate anger. And I think I would like to get some feedback on whether or not there is some legitimate anger out there, whether it be Black women or whether it be men.
Queens? Go ahead. Whoever wants to take it.
They all
throw that one out to the group.
Well, I think, hello everyone, how are you?
This is just because, people.
I truly think that, unfortunately, it is, the burden of the past, and it's so rooted that it continues from generation to generation. Mm-hmm. And I strongly do believe that we are asked to carry a lot on our shoulders, and because of broken homes, broken families, whether it be the system or again, just because we weren't afforded the same luxuries as some other class of people, where we have families and we see generations of families together being kept together. We lose our men to war, to jail, to everything else. It's like other races, I feel like, lose their men, but then we have the additional things that we lose too. And so we have to carry the family by ourselves. The moms, we work our 2 jobs and all that, and our men are not present, whether or not they're free to be present or they just don't know how to be present. And yet, and still, when you have things like what's happening now, we feel like we have to have their back in that also. So we wear so many different hats, and then some of our same men then come to us and tell us, oh, you're too angry, you're too loud, you're too this, you're too that. It's like, yo, wait, hold up, wait a minute. We have to carry so much, and it's all great when we're holding down the children and we're running homes and we're working 10 million jobs. But then when our voice doesn't suit you while we hold you down, when it doesn't suit you personally, then we're chastised and we're made to feel like we're too strong or we're too bitter and we're this and we're that. And then we're left for other classes of women.
Kings, you heard what the Queen said. How does that resonate with you? Because that's a real emotion.
Well, to me, women have always been stronger. Women are the mothers of America. Whether it be this race or another race, women have always carried the burdens. We have had the luxury of blaming the woman biblically because of what happened biblically, and we have brought that down from way back. But the women have always been the muscle of America. So maybe true, they have a right to be more sensitive than we do, and they have a right to expect better relationships from us. And maybe maybe that's the big reason between the sexes.
Mia?
I agree. I agree with what was said. However, sometimes in my career, I always say I can't work harder than my clients. And in my relationships, I can't work harder than whoever comes to the table with me. So if I'm prepared to be messy, I'm prepared to talk about the negatives as well as the positives, because like my king Worry over here said, he wears many personalities, and so do I. So Monday you may get Miss Mill, and on Tuesday you may get Mimi. But no matter which way you get, you're getting my authentic self. So if you're willing to come to the table and be that, then however the chips may fall, we're going to make it, because we're in this together. And I want you to win.
I want you to win. Regina. We're not waking him up, are we?
No, I put him down. Thanks. That's good. Yes, I do agree that women are strong. Black women are strong. We've always been strong. But for me, that word strong, probably within the first 5 to 7 years after my divorce, I was so tired of hearing that. Oh, you're so strong, you're so strong, you're so strong. Because it seemed like an excuse for men or anyone to treat me badly because I was strong and I could handle it. And I just got so tired of hearing that. I didn't want to be strong. I wanted to be woo, woo, woo. You know, I wanted a hug. I needed a hug. But I felt like I couldn't show that side because the expectation was she can handle it. She'll be all right. So just to kind of piggyback on what Mia was saying, you kind of end up splitting off into these different personalities. And one alter ego I have is Regina Actual. And Regina Actual has that wall up, and she don't care. There's no telling what's going to come out of her mouth. You might not like it, but it's going to be true. It's going to be the truth. It's going to be her authentic self. She's not afraid. And then there's Lynn, and Lynn is the softer side of me. So I think we all have our alter egos, but just on the word strong, for me, it was just something that I was like, I don't want to hear that anymore. I don't want to be strong today, you know. So
that's very interesting. I really want to get to know Lynn. But it's true. It is true, and sometimes we don't recognize that we have multiple personalities. We really don't. We think we're the same all the time. And if people could observe, and whenever we have people give us feedback, we're shocked because we're saying, I don't know that person. Yes, but that's you. That is you. Monica.
I totally agree. However, I think after my divorce, you know, I heard that you're strong, you're so strong. And I used to think to myself, no, I'm tired. That's what I am. I'm sick and tired. That's what I am. And if that persona is I'm strong, it was the furthest from the truth. And I think men, when they see women who carry a heavy load and are able to hold it down, they see it as, you know, oh, she's a very strong, independent woman. But they never look at, you know, that Black woman is tired. You know, she's really tired. You know, let me help a sister out somewhere.
Yeah.
You know? So
that's a good point.
I'm not saying that, you know, we're not strong in our own ways and whatever, you know. But however, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, I'm just tired. Not strong, just tired. So
interesting. Iris is 100% championing your answers there. She's cheerleading there. Valerie.
That's all I got.
Well, I thought about the first line of this poem. It says, "We wear the mask that grins and lies," and it was written by Paul Laurence Dunbar. And how we have personalities, but we have masks. that we take on and off to whatever situation we need to be in. We can do that so easily. Sometimes we do it with our voice, depending on where we're at. It all depends, but we are so adaptable. And so my queen sisters, when they talked about being strong, and I echo that as being tired of really being exhausted, in folks saying, well, you have to be strong. And I can recall a point in my life where there was a crisis. And I remember saying to my father, who said, you don't have time to cry. You can't cry. You have to be strong. Asking him, well, when is it okay for me to be weak? And I never really got an answer for that. But on the other part of it, if you are saying this to a little girl that grows up to be an adult that has this persona, that this is who you are, this pillar of strength, when is it okay to let your guard down and be weak and be vulnerable and be who you need to be? Do you always need to go in the shower and cry? Can you do it amongst friends? Is that okay? And so there's a lot when it talks about dealing with that word of you're being strong. And for who are you always being strong for? Carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, when if all of the sisters are carrying the same weight, can we share that weight, some queens, a little bit, please and thank you?
My kings, you haven't heard the challenge. How do you view that?
Well, I want to say, in hearing what queens were saying, and they said something that was phenomenal, that sometimes the fact that they decide, I'm not going to let this break me. And sometimes we can come off that you're strong, and we have to be careful not to use that as an excuse, not to be sensitive toward their needs. Yeah, because sometimes when we say people are strong, we have the tendency, oh, you can handle it and just go on. And so, and rather than saying, okay, you survived, because a person survives something, don't mean they don't want somebody there in their corner to say you can relax now.
Right.
Yeah, and you got some support. So we can't allow what we perceive as strength to stop us from giving that support. Because you're strong don't mean that you won't need a hug, or that they can be vulnerable and know that won't count against them or come back to hurt them, and somebody understand because you went through something and it was traumatic.
I also don't think, to follow up real quick, is that we should not use the perceived strength of the queen as an excuse for us not to come to the table.
Exactly.
To continue to let her stay and allow her to stay in that situation where she's carrying it all, and we're championing her from afar as a sideline cheerleader rather than getting in the game and going in, to your point, saying, okay, substitution now. I got this now. You sub out, I'll take it from here, and that we can build this together. So I think we miss that sometimes. Brother Harold. Oh, I'm sorry, Brother Crutcher, did I cut you off?
Well, yeah, and because what you said is something that we need to make sure, because one of the things I keep hearing, we lose the team concept.
Yes.
And that's what you mentioned went there, because you did survive this, then I step in. And when that team concept is not there, people get worn down.
Yes.
And the strongest person after a while can get worn down because we were designed to operate together. Not separate. Isolation is a killer. Yeah.
And let me just piggyback real quick off of what you're saying. And there comes the angry black woman. We put her out there. We put her in the fight. We never subbed. We didn't give her a timeout. We didn't bring in the water. Didn't give her a towel to wipe her brow. And now she's angry because, hey, I need to make a change.
Yeah.
And we're staying on the sideline cheering, not paying attention to what's going on in the ring. Excellent point. Thank you, Brother Harold.
I think a lot have been said that the black male, the kings are interdependent upon the queens. If we realize that, we need to voice that to our brothers so that everybody can improve. I think these conversations are good, but the the church is outside of this Zoom meeting. And if we really want to help the sisters, we can start spreading what we're talking about here. Very good. We are interdependent on our sisters.
Excellent point there, Charles.
Well, actually, Vince, I know we're coming to the end of the session today, and I wanted to leave you with this, and that is this right here. Monica had a question that she wanted to pose to us, and I think it'll be a follow-up on today's conversation. So I would, if it's okay, if we can, when it's time for us to end the meeting, I would like for her to have the opportunity to ask us a question that I think would be a good follow-up for next week. And so if we can do that, I think that would be great.
Brother Edwards, did you have a comment at this time? Valerie?
It has just been a pleasure to be part of this one more time. These wonderful Sunday conversations are always inspiring, and I look forward to next week. So thank you, Kings and Queens, for having me.
Gina.
I was just thinking that this is better than last week. It just gets better and better. And after COVID, we're going to have a Brother Can We Talk conference.
Absolutely. For sure.
Shake hands and hug face to face. I appreciate you guys for having this forum and for allowing us to be a part of it, because I know it's brother Can We Talk?
Brother Can We Talk?
I appreciate you letting the sisters in on it. So thank you so much.
I'm so glad to have you. Mia.
Yes, sir. This is a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. I enjoy these conversations. I talk for a living, so I just feel like this just gets my week pumped. Start tomorrow with a positive mind, an open heart, and I hope that we grow more, see some more faces, everyone come to the table, and just be willing. That's it. Just be willing.
Thank you. Iris?
Yes, I thank Rory for inviting me, and yes, it's affirming for me. You talked about isolation, especially during this time, working from home, being single, living alone. So it's just nice to hear from the kings and queens and just to learn and to listen. So I do appreciate this forum. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Just because.
Hello. Even though I came in on a tail end, I appreciate the conversation. I found this to be very interesting. I thank Valerie for the invite. And I definitely thank you for having the platform for this kind of expression. And I look forward to being here again, possibly next week.
Look forward to it. Barbara, I hope we have said something to inspire you and you found the conversation interesting, that you might want to join us again. May I hear from you?
Yes. Hi, everyone, kings and queens. I really enjoyed the conversation. I did come in late because I totally forgot about it. But once I got in and started listening, yes, it was very inspiring, and I look forward to next week. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Dr. Davis.
Well, Coach, it definitely was a pleasure for me to be able to listen in on some very good conversations, and I look forward to the opportunity to listen in again and hopefully participate a little more. But I like listening.
Thank you. Brother Roy.
Yes, sir. I just want to say again, I thank everybody for joining. Our numbers are growing. And the only way that we will continue to grow this is for people who are here to invite, a friend. That's all we have to do is invite one friend. And next week, that'll make it, we'll have 30 people next week. And then the following week, we'll have 60 people. Because all we have to do is we have to continue to give people an opportunity to have a platform to express whatever their concerns may be, as far as moving in through relationships, moving through their identification of how they identify themselves as a person of color, We're in the midst of this COVID, and we're also in the midst of this Black Lives Matter. But I always ask the question is who does Black Lives Matter to, right? So if you ask the question about what we're talking about, then I think it's only imperative that we continue to invite like minds. And the way that we overcome the negative narratives, we have to be just as active with the proactive narrative. And I think this is a platform for that. So I just, thank everybody again for joining today. And I ask people to invite a friend, just one next week. Just invite one friend and see if they can commit to an hour of their time next Sunday evening. Thank you.
Okay, before I get to Monica, Brother Crusher, did you have a closing comment?
I would just like to say thank you. Apologize. Late getting on. We had to pray for somebody that was very sick.
Amen.
But I value these conversations, and I'm glad the queens are here.
Amen.
When we brothers don't have space in our lives to hear the expression of the queens, I think we miss what it means to be a brother.
Hey, excellent point.
So I'm just excited about it. Look forward to continuing these kind of conversations.
Thank you for being with us. We enjoy you. Monica, both a closing comment and your question.
Closing comment. Once again, I thank the Kings for having us queens here. I thank the Queens because I take away something every week. So I really have enjoyed being here with you all. And hopefully we'll be back again next week with a guest.
Okay.
The question I have is, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it, but after a loving relationship ends, whether that be just a relationship or whether that be a marriage, whatever it is, women tend to, I say, go through the steps of death. Like there's different stages of death, grieving, I should say, grieving. Uh-huh. And we go through that, and we go through each and every stage. I don't think we could skip one. And that hopefully we don't skip one. And hopefully that makes us stronger for our next relationship. However, my question to the Kings is, how do you deal with it after the end of a relationship? Because I know that men compartmentalize and they seem like everything's okay. So this once again goes back to that vulnerable side. So I'm just curious what the Kings have to say on that. How at the end of a relationship, a marriage, whatever, how is it that they deal with that?
Kings, you have so been challenged, and that will be our topic for next week that we will address. We will then be vulnerable. We will then undress. We will then take off our masks and get real. We're going to talk about this. So we've got to come back. You got to come hear us now. Because there are a couple of people on this panel. I definitely can't wait to see them undress and take their masks off. I want to hear what they got.
Vince, the question itself, just listen, the question that she asked is, I'll save it for next week, because it's almost like the perception is, and I don't mean it the way that it sounds, because it's almost like we're not human. But I'll just leave it right there.
That hasn't been said.
No. I don't mean it that way. No. Honestly, I don't mean it that way. I understand her question, but I was trying to answer it, but I said, you know what? Bring it to the forefront. Let us talk about it, and then you could better understand.
Yeah. Take your mask off.
I think
step to the mic. Brother Harold?
We find that we are human, that we mourn, that we go through the same stages they do.
Right, and but see, that is what I was trying to explain to her. But I wanted us to be able to talk about it.
No, fellas,
let's carry it over the next week. Let's carry it over the next week.
You're not gonna get a running start.
Right.
You're gonna come next week. You're going to take your mask
Let's
off, you're
talk
going to
about
get
it.
naked, and we're going to talk about this. So
Well,
that
let's
has
talk.
been said.
Let's
Brothers,
talk
can
about.
we talk? We appreciate all of you. I thank you so much for your honest conversation. Now, it's going to be real next week. You got to come back and to hear this conversation next week. But in all
We're gonna be fired up next week. You know.
I'm all for that. I'm going to wear my fireman's hat. I'm going to be ready to go. I'm going to have my hose to put the fire out. But please, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to be here and sharing your thoughts with us is so critical because that's how we learn. It's also how we close this gap that we think we have in our culture, in our relationship, in our relationships with each other. A king is not a king without his queen. And a queen makes a king, and a king is a king when he has a queen. On that, let me say to you, brother, can we talk? Have a great evening and God bless.
Good night.